This is my farm. It's on the verge of bankruptcy. Today, we're going to start bringing it back to life, create our first field, and earn our first income. All of this is to make it start generating tens of thousands of dollars every month. If you're interested, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's head to the farm. First of all, I decided to start with restoring our farm, but before everything it needed to be bought, so I went there. When I arrived at the place, the farm pleasantly surprised me. The territory turned out to be quite large. Especially, I was interested in one of the barns standing on the plot. Looking inside, I discovered a quad bike, and a little further, behind the trees, I noticed an old broken tractor. Having examined the entire territory, I saw many abandoned buildings and even an unfinished house. Under another unfinished barn, of which only the frame remained, I found an old disc cultivator. In general, the plot turned out to be very good, so I decided to purchase it. For the farm, I paid $170,000, and now it was necessary to develop it so that it would begin to bring income. Since after the purchase, I had a little money left, the first thing I decided to do was sell the found quad bike. We did not especially need it, and the money would be useful. Loading the vehicle into the bed of the pickup, I went to the store. On the spot, I managed to get almost $1,500, which in general is quite good. While I was there, at the same time, I purchased a chainsaw. After all, selling trees at the beginning of the game can bring a good income, and without a chainsaw, it is impossible to transport logs. I also bought a trailer for the pickup. In addition, I took a set of tools and canisters with diesel fuel. Since I was going to restore the found tractor, loading everything necessary into the bed, I went back to the farm. Now, when everything is ready, it is possible to go to the farm. It is very good that we have our own pickup. At the beginning, it really helps a lot because the road to the store is quite long, and with it, we manage much faster. As soon as I arrived at the farm, the first thing I decided to do was unload everything that we had bought. After that, I headed into the forest to cut down a few trees and earn my first money. The forest was located right behind our farm, and the road to it passed through a small river. Fortunately, there was a small bridge for passing there. Having reached the place, I cut down one tree, then sawed it into small logs. Driving closer with the pickup, I began loading them into the bed. There was not much space there, but still I managed to stack several logs, for which we also would be able to get money. When the bed of the pickup was completely loaded, I began loading the remaining wood into the trailer. Everything else fit there exactly. Now, it was possible to go to the sawmill to sell our first goods. However, already about to leave, I remembered that I had forgotten to fasten the logs with straps. Quickly doing this, I again sat behind the wheel and set off. To my surprise, the pickup turned out to be powerful enough to pull such a heavy load, and I reached the place quite quickly. At the sawmill, I unloaded the trailer, removed the straps, and sold the wood. For everything, we received a little more than $3,000. The sum, although small, but for a start, very good. Now it was possible to return to the farm, because ahead, a lot of work was still waiting for us. As soon as I arrived at the place, I decided to deal with the found tractor. We already had everything necessary, so I placed the set of tools nearby and began the repair. After some time, I managed to fix everything. We were really lucky. For its restoration, no additional investments were required. I sat in the cab, turned the key, and the engine immediately started. Everything worked perfectly. However, there was very little fuel left in the tank, so I took the canister and filled the diesel fuel to the top. Now, the tractor was completely ready for work. I was especially pleased that it had cost us almost nothing. In fact, we had spent only on the tools. After this, I decided to attach the old disc cultivator which I had found earlier. Driving the tractor closer, I examined it and understood that it could not do without repair. The restoration of the cultivator cost about $450, a small sum, but now we had our own equipment with which it was possible to cultivate the soil and create new fields. When the work was finished, I tidied up on the farm and threw the canisters back into the bed of the pickup. Since there was still money on the balance, I decided to demolish the old barn in which I had earlier found the quad bike. The dismantling cost a little more than $6,000, and instead of it, I built a new modern barn costing $18,000. After all, machinery needs to be stored somewhere. When the construction was completed, I immediately drove the pickup and the tractor inside. The day was already coming to an end, so it was necessary to think about a place to rest. The house on the plot still remained unfinished, so I set up a tent nearby. For today, it was possible to confidently finish. A huge amount of work had been done. The next morning, the weather turned out not to be the best. The sky was covered with clouds, and a cool wind was blowing. Nevertheless, this should not have interfered with the work. I immediately headed to our tractor because today I wanted to create the first field. I chose a plot of land right in front of our farm, lowered the cultivator, and began plowing. Almost immediately, I noticed that it was quite hard for the tractor to pull it. It even seemed to me that the cultivator was too big for such a machine. After making several passes, I noticed that the tractor's wheels were slipping badly. At first, I thought the matter was in the machinery, but then I noticed that the soil in this place had never been cultivated before, and only then I understood what the reason was. The ground here turned out to be too wet. Apparently, the groundwater lies very close to the surface, because of which the tractor slides and loses traction with the soil. Cultivation work took much more time than I expected. I had to move slowly so that the tractor would not slip, but despite this, I still managed. When the field was completely plowed, I sighed with relief. Now we had our own first field. I hope the harvest on it will be good and bring us a decent income. However, before receiving profit, it was necessary to plant a crop. For this, a seeder was required, and we did not yet have money for its purchase. Therefore, I decided to go again into the forest to cut some wood and sell it in order to get the necessary amount. Cutting down one more tree, I sawed it into parts, loaded the logs into the bed of the pickup, and took them to the sawmill. The sale brought me a little less than $7,000, a good result. After this, I returned to the farm, got into the tractor, and went to the store. There, I bought the simplest and cheapest seeder for only $2,000, and also bought several bags of seeds. Attaching the equipment to the tractor, I headed back to the farm. Not reaching the house, I immediately drove onto our new field. As the first crop, I decided to sow canola. It is unpretentious to the soil, and besides, the sowing season was just coming to an end. Therefore, I immediately began to work. By the time the sun began to lean towards sunset, the field was completely sown. Now it only remained to wait until the canola sprouted. At that, I decided to finish the day. I put all the machinery in the barn and went to rest. The next morning, I decided to do some cleaning on our farm. The territory turned out to be quite large, so I decided to start at least with the entrance. In construction mode, I removed all the grass that was growing right in the middle of the road. After that, the area immediately began to look much neater, which could not but please the eye. While the canola on our field continued to grow and money was extremely necessary for us, the only way of earning remained the sale of wood. To earn more, I decided to purchase a larger trailer. Fortunately, we already had a tractor that could pull it. I went to the store and chose there the cheapest trailer for logs. It turned out to be quite large, even a bit too big for our tractor, but I thought that with effort our tractor would still pull it. With thoughts about the money we would earn, I headed to the forest. Arriving there, I began cutting and loading the trees into the new trailer as soon as the trailer was completely loaded. By the way, several trees fit into it. I decided to see where, at the moment, the highest prices for wood were. It turned out that now it was most profitable to sell wood at the railway station. Therefore, I sat on our tractor and set off on the road. By the way, I noticed that even on loose soil, it coped with the trailer, and on the dirt road, it went without any difficulty at all. Arriving at the station, I was very disappointed. It turned out that they no longer needed wood. Therefore, I had to go to the sawmill, where we had sold wood earlier. The road took a lot of time, since during that time it was necessary to travel quite a long distance. But in the end, we still reached it. For this trailer of logs, we were paid almost $9,500. At least, something made me glad. So I decided not to stop and continue the work. I was doing this all winter and spring, and only by the end of spring, I finally finished the work. During all this time, I managed to earn a little more than $100,000. Working was really hard, but now this money could be spent on developing and improving our farm. Returning home from the sawmill, I decided to do something else. Since by that time the grass had already grown, the choice was obvious. It was the right time to start harvesting hay. First, it was necessary to buy a mower so that it would be possible to cut the grass. Therefore, I went to the store. There, I chose a simple but reliable model, which cost only $5,000. Attaching it to our tractor, I headed back to the farm. When I arrived, the sun was already beginning to set, so I decided to put all the machinery in the barn and continue the work tomorrow. The next morning, I immediately began mowing the grass. I decided to cut quite a large area in order to earn as much money as possible. By noon, the mowing work was completely finished, and now it remained to decide how to process all the grass for further transportation and sale. Selling it raw would be too cheap, so I decided first to press it into bales. For this, it was necessary to purchase a baler. I left the mower at the farm and headed to the store. Arriving at the place, I immediately chose the cheapest baler for round bales. It cost $12,500. Attaching it to the tractor, I headed back to the farm. As soon as I drove onto the hayfield, I realized that I had forgotten to buy the special net with which the baler wraps the bales so that they do not fall apart. I had to run again to the pickup and drive back to the store. This time, I immediately bought several rolls of net, paying almost $1,500 for them. Loading everything into the bed of the pickup, I went back to the farm. There, I unloaded the rolls and installed them into our baler. Now everything was ready for work. And just as I wanted to start working, I became very upset. It turned out that our tractor simply did not have enough power, even to start the baler. Therefore, I made the only right decision to go again to the store and purchase a new, more powerful tractor. Fortunately, we had just enough money for such a purchase. Arriving at the store, I began choosing machinery that would be ideal for our work. After a short reflection, I settled on a tractor of the Case brand. It had more than enough power, and to improve traction with the ground, I installed wheels of increased width. They were supposed to help not get stuck in the swampy area where our farm is located. This decision made it possible to get better grip on viscous soil. In addition, this tractor had a comfortable, spacious cab, which would make work much more pleasant. The machine had front-wheel drive and was distinguished by high reliability. I seated a worker behind the wheel of the new tractor, and I myself followed in the pickup. After some time, all the machinery was delivered to the farm. I could not wait to test the new purchase, so I immediately detached the old tractor and attached our baler to the new one. Now it was possible to truly begin the work. After this, I immediately started working. The new tractor with wide wheels handled the viscous soil perfectly. Now the machine confidently went even over the softest areas. Thanks to this, the baling process went quickly and without any difficulties. In just a short time, I managed to collect and pack most of the mowed grass. The work went easily, and for the first time, I felt that our farm was gradually beginning to come to life. By evening, all the grass was completely pressed into round bales. There turned out to be quite a lot of them. The total number amounted to 31 bales. Since it was already dark and the day was coming to an end, I decided to put all the machinery in place and go rest. The next morning, I sat in the tractor and immediately headed to the store, because now we needed to purchase equipment for wrapping the bales in special film so that they could undergo the fermentation process and turn into silage. The wrapper itself cost us almost $9,000. In addition, I bought several additional rolls of film, which I later planned to pick up by car. Attaching the wrapper to the tractor, I headed back to the farm. As soon as I arrived, I immediately decided to start working. Driving up to the first bale, I began wrapping it, and already after a short time, it was completely covered in film. Carefully dropping it nearby, I continued wrapping the remaining bales. When the roll of film that came with the wrapper ran out, I had to run to the pickup. Sitting behind the wheel, I headed to the store, where the pre-purchased rolls were already waiting for us. Throwing them into the bed, I returned home and loaded the new rolls into the wrapper. Now it was possible to continue the work. By noon, all the bales were completely wrapped in film, and now it only remained to wait until the grass inside them completely went through the fermentation process and turned into silage. Only after that, it would be possible to sell them and receive profit. While the bales were maturing, I took care of farm chores. Beginning to bring all the machinery back to its place, I realized that we already had quite a lot of it, and it no longer fit into the old barn. Therefore, I decided to demolish the unfinished hangar and build a new, spacious one. The construction cost us about $10,000, but now all the machinery fit without problems. True, it was necessary to cut down one tree that was in the way and was pressing against the wall of the new hangar. After this, everything looked neat and truly farmer-like. I sat in the tractor and began in turn to drive all the machinery, trailers, mounted equipment, and tools under the roof of the new hangar. When everything was arranged in its places, I finally felt satisfaction from the work done. At this, the day was coming to an end. I decided to rest, because ahead of us, there are still many tasks and plans for the development of the farm. And if you like this video, put a like and subscribe to the channel. Bye everyone!